if I had to give one piece of advice, it would be like,
your thumbnails don't look good until you made like so many of them that you actually become better.
Nailing down all the basic aspects of designing.
It's really easy to make one good thing and then fall off. It's really hard to make good thing and then continue pulling off good things over and over and over again.
I got you.
Have you ever learned something and then realized it would have been so much easier if only you'd known this one thing before you started? I have. It's always harder when you're doing something for the first time. So in this video, I interviewed some of the best thumbnail artists I know to see what insights they have to offer. And trust me, the advice they gave was so helpful, even experienced artists will appreciate their tips. And to start off, the first question is, how long have you been making thumbnails for, and why did you start?
How long ago was May? Like 2024. It's like
That's like nearly a year ago,
10
right?
months. Yeah, like around 10 months, I think.
Yeah.
I've been started. And I had interest like months before I actually began, but I never knew how to start because there weren't any good tutorials for mobile until I saw yours.
Wait, so it was my tutorial the first tutorial you stole from mobile thumbnails?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I can show you my first thumbnail if you want.
Yeah, that would be great. I'd love that.
For a first thumbnail, what are your first impressions?
Oh, wow. So I can tell you use Nomad, right? And then you used, was that my screenshot for the, like, my edited screenshot for the background?
Yeah,
It's amazing to see the progression and how much you've improved.
Yeah, well,
I think it's better than my first thumbnail, though.
No way.
a little bit over a year now, and I started actually for me because I wanted to get into YouTube, which didn't end up happening. But yeah, I wanted to learn them for myself, and over time as I got better, I noticed, more and more people asking me to make them thumbnails, which is when I really decided to start making them for other people.
Do you still have your first thumbnail?
I do. Yeah, that's the first thumbnail.
I can still see potential there.
So it's been almost a year. I started like June last year. I don't know. I just saw like a bunch of people making thumbnails, and I made like in my animator, made like one or two, and then like I started getting better. I found Alex's tutorial. It was a live stream where he showed NPC mod and like settings for shaders, and I copied everything and I like texted him and he actually responded, and we became like good friends. He taught me some stuff, and then like during summer I just like started getting better and better, and then now I'm using like Blender for renders, and I got like Photoshop and everything.
I've made thumbnails for around 4 years. I think I started just because I wanted to make cool stuff. Like, I wanted to be a YouTuber, and for the life of me, I couldn't get to recording myself. So I was like, okay, I'll learn the skills first, and then I'll record. And then I never ended up recording, so, yeah.
That's actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
And that's something that I, as being a YouTuber myself, I always wanted to like master every part of the process, like including thumbnails, including editing. So it's really cool that you you took that on. Second question. How would you describe your process of designing a thumbnail from start to finish?
First thing I do is go into Minecraft, get a background, or that could be just like a nomad model, wherever. Then I use Blockbench to get my players. A lot of the time I render them in Nomad, but sometimes if my clients are like focused around Java Edition, I'd probably use Blockbench since this like rendering itself is more like close to that, you know.
Right.
Honestly, in terms of editing, I normally start editing the background first thing, and then the player. After I'm done on Ibis Paint, I actually go in a different app, Lightroom. I do like my color correction there instead of in Ibis, because I mean all the settings are similar to Camera Raw Filter in Photoshop, if you've heard of it. I have a lot more flexibility with it, and I actually really enjoy using it, so I'd recommend it.
Yeah, that's something interesting that I haven't done before, but I've heard of people doing, and I think that because I do feel like in Ibis Paint and even in Procreate the color correction tools are quite limited. So yeah, I think that's a really good idea, and I want to try doing that more. I use I think are you iOS or are you Android?
I'm Android.
Yeah, even on Android, like just the default Photos app has some basic color correction, like and sliders you can use to do some final touches. Yeah, I use that occasionally.
Oh yeah, those are actually quite a lot of settings.
Yeah,
I never thought about that.
So it usually starts with asking my client for references. Once I have a solid idea for the composition, I usually go in game and I start posing everything. And my thought process is very simple. I'm mostly trying to get the composition perfect, because what I find is that at my skill level, it's really easy to edit the lighting in post, whereas it's harder to change perspectives and the composition in Photoshop. And once I go into Photoshop, it's really a very simple process. I start with the lighting, so shading, shadows, highlights, and lastly it's the ambience and the color correction, which are probably the two most important things. So that's just making the entire thumbnail look better and making everything look like it actually belongs in the thumbnail, which is what the ambience is for. And I think that's what really makes a scary thumbnail scary. So
yeah, that's great. And you do a lot of those like horror type thumbnails, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I've almost completely moved out of CTR. And that's primarily because I didn't really I felt like my skills were almost getting capped while I was there, because I couldn't use a lot of my Photoshop knowledge, whereas in horror thumbnails I think I can use them a lot more freely.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. And I feel like the way you mentioned about like the basics and getting your composition down as like the most important thing, that's a theme I've seen come up in a lot of my conversations. Is it's just the big difference between a great thumbnail and a good thumbnail is that getting those basics nailed down. Because if you don't have those, no matter how much color correction and lighting and shading you do, it's not going to fix it.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So I first ask the client if they have any ideas on what they want, if they want any text, what color styles are on their channels, what fonts, skins. Then I like ask for a real life thumbnail or like a Minecraft thumbnail that they think will look good in their situation. And then I try to copy the style of that thumbnail or like the posing or whatever. And if it's like a simple thumbnail, I use NPC mod, and I sometimes use shaders, but I stopped using shaders now because I think I can like do more with lightning without shaders. And then if if they want like a more posed thumbnail, or like they want guns on it, or like some mod or mobs that are not in Minecraft, then I use Blender. So I pose, try to recreate what they sent me. I usually send them like every move I make, I send to the customer, so they can like correct me as soon as possible, and I don't have to redo like the whole thumbnail. Because when I first started, I wouldn't do it. I would just make the thumbnail and then ask if they liked it. and then when they didn't, I have to like redo the whole thing. So it's double the work. And yeah, so we pose, render, and then comes Photoshop. Yay! I like to use like a bunch of camera raw filters in Photoshop, and to make everything like pop out. If it's more like Minecrafty thumbnail, I don't like add too much of everything. But if it's like a super cinematic one, I add like a lot of saturation and brightness and everything to make it like pop out. Then like a bunch of FX layers. I like to add like inner shadows and inner glows. Inner shadows from the place where the sun is coming from, and then inner glows also from the places where inner shadows are. So I erase it on like the opposite side where it's darker.
Yeah, so I usually get a sketch or a reference, get the initial posing, send it to client to get some feedback, then start on the editing process, send it over to the client, get feedback, finish the thumbnail.
Okay, so you kind of have like two check-in points
Yeah,
where you get feedback.
yeah, sometimes a little more, but
Yeah.
pretty much.
That's good. And I think like sketching it, a lot of people are probably have trouble sketching it out, but even if it's really, really simple sketches, they can help a lot to get your ideas kind of sorted out.
Yeah, the main idea with a sketch, for me at least, is to actually get the values in, the luminance values, to
Yeah.
understand how it's not gonna look, but yeah,
Yeah, all the components.
exactly.
Third question. What software do you use for creating thumbnails and why? Okay, so I think you kind of answered this next question in your previous answer. And it's really just about the software you use for creating thumbnails. So it sounds like you use Blockbench, Ibis Paint, and then Lightroom occasionally. Is there anything else you use besides those three? Nomad, of course.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty much it, yeah.
Right. Yeah. The same with me. I've actually started using like Ibis more, and what I do is because it has some things that it does better than Procreate. So sometimes I'll use like a combination of them, which is it's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, is there a way to like port project files from like Procreate to Ibis? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, well you can export the PSD and then open that in Ibis.
Oh yeah.
That's the best way to do it probably. Although Ibis does treat some like blend modes differently, so it won't look the same exactly, but you can then modify it pretty easily.
Mm-hmm.
So I use Photoshop now for my thumbnails. That's just for editing. So I use Photoshop, Blender, Blockbench, and obviously Minecraft with the NPC mod. And I use Photoshop because when I started out, obviously I watched a lot of tutorials, and pretty much every tutorial was using Photoshop.
Yeah.
And I've dabbled a bit in a few other softwares, but I've just found that Photoshop is probably the fastest and the UI is the cleanest, and that's why I like it.
Yeah. And so you use the how much do you use like Blender versus the NPC mod?
So I use Blender. I don't use Blender for my players anymore. There were a few thumbnails where I use them for my players, but usually what I do is the players and the background are with NPC mod, and the horror mobs alone are with Blender and Blockbench.
Okay. So you kind of
that's about
combine
it.
both those together. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Is that because like
So I use.
is the NPC mod easier to use, or does it like give better results too?
Honestly, it's probably just because I'm a lot more comfortable with it.
Right.
Because I've been using NPC mod for like since I started, so almost a year now, or more than a year with NPC mod. So I just find that it's a lot easier to use, especially for backgrounds. And I think backgrounds really change the thumbnail. So in terms of backgrounds, I find it easier because I can like edit it like, block by block. I can build my own structures. I can pretty much do everything
Right.
faster. Rather than rendering it, and I find that it takes a lot longer to pose the characters and such as well. So I'm okay with this.
Yeah, I think that's a good workflow. taking advantage of the in-game experiences makes it much easier to work with that. And I think Minecraft's lighting, even though it might not be as advanced as something like Blender, it's a lot, often a lot easier to edit and work with, and that's why like using even vanilla screenshots, even without shaders, sometimes can be helpful.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a lot faster, and I really appreciate being able to, like use different shaders, so I can just be in one spot and I can see how all of my different shaders look and decide which one looks best and just go with that.
Right. Yeah. That's great.
I use Photoshop, Blender, Blockbench, Minecraft, obviously,
Right.
and Minimator. I chose Photoshop because I felt like it was the most professional and the most detailed software. I started with Paint.net actually, which is like a better version of the normal Paint that people used to make texture packs in.
Right.
Then Blender, because I felt like it was better than Cinema 4D in the sense that it was used more in other places than Minecraft,
Yeah.
I guess. And it also had more tutorials. I felt like the Cinema 4D community was a bit more old, and you needed to have connections to learn it. What else? I use Blockbench because it's easy to pose in and just like very suited for
Minecraft.
pixelarty. Yeah, pixelarty stuff, like low voxel stuff.
Right.
Minimator I only use for the clouds. It's just really easy to use it for clouds, but I'm thinking of finding a new method, maybe in Blender somehow.
Really, yeah. I use sometimes,
Yeah,
I just have the, in my mobile app that I use Nomad, and in Blender when I use it occasionally, I just input the clouds as a separate object.
Yeah, so I'm thinking of doing that.
Yeah.
For like switching to Blender at least. And then Minecraft, obviously, which I used the new
Yeah.
PC mod. It's just really, really nice to use because it's pretty much the only way you can get good vanilla-ish style with good lighting.
Yeah.
Um,
And the way you can use it with shaders just gives you so
Yeah.
much flexibility.
yeah. And we're trying to make it as suitable as possible for thumbnails, but with low funding that we get, it's a little hard.
Yeah, definitely. Fourth question. Do you primarily focus on design or clickability when making a thumbnail? Which do you prefer?
I mean, for most of my time making thumbnails, I focused on making it look as good as possible. But I mean, after talking with other YouTubers, seeing how like their thumbnails are, I realized it's best to get a concept that's as good as possible, clear and clickable rather than just focusing on pure looks. I mean, it's best to focus on like a mix of the two. What I like to do to make sure my concepts like good is literally just draw a couple sketches with like a brush, and then I'd probably go into ask other people for feedback on it and like choose the best one.
It's something that's I guess I've kind of just noticed personally is that I feel like thumbnails can suppress your desire to like create unique designs and use your design skills because your thumbnails are really just about getting the viewer to click. But graphic design is so much more than that. So
yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I've felt quite limited with the commissions I do. Nothing like against the people that commission me. I love working for them. It's just that you have told me this as well, that it's difficult to balance being creative and doing something unique rather than just doing something that works just for pure clickability.
exactly, and really there won't be a big difference between the clickability of something you can spend like hours and hours on a thumbnail to make it look at a lot of little details, but it won't really affect the clickability most of the time. and that's
Yeah.
it can be discouraging for graphic designers like us.
Something I do since like I do commissions that are paid is that I also like when I have time do stuff genuinely that I want to do for pure fun. So because at the
Right.
end of the day, I'm only doing this because I enjoy it, and if I'm taking that away, there's no point in continuing.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds like you used to focus on like CTR and clickability,
Yeah.
and now you've kind of shifted to an area that you can kind of use your skills and knowledge of design more. So have you like appreciated that? Is that which kind of end of the spectrum do you prefer to work on?
So me personally, that's one of the primary reasons. As I said, I switched to horror because I can utilize my skills a lot more, you know. And I think that, you know, while I was doing CTR, it was really the same thing over and over,
Right.
and I didn't really enjoy that. But you know, it focused on the clickability, so obviously it was a lot quicker, but it was also really easy, you know, which I'm not complaining about. But over time it got really, really repetitive, which ended with me you know, almost quitting. So if you ask me to pick one, I would probably lean towards the design aspect. You know, I really enjoy the process of designing thumbnails, but I think it's important to find a balance. I don't think you should go, you know, overboard. So if I have a thumbnail, like a horror thumbnail, but there's like a really intense color correction, or you know, there's like a lot of fog, if I think that will hinder the clickability, I usually like tone it down. But for the most part, I lean towards, you know, design based thumbnails. I've had like a lot of
Yeah.
debates with my friends about whether you judge how good a thumbnail is by the design quality or how good it does on YouTube,
Yeah.
which is why I think, you know, somewhere in between is pretty good.
Yeah. There has to be a balance.
Exactly.
It also like it's about clients, what they want, because if they don't want it to be like super creative, then I just copy what they want. Because a lot of like small creators, for example, they like stuff that already worked for other creators. They don't want creativity, they want views. But then others, like bigger creators, they want stuff that is creative because that makes them different from others. That's like a thing I noticed, that big creators, they create trends, and then smaller creators, they just copy them. So I don't add too much creativity because it's easier for me to just copy something. But then I have like some things that I do for every thumbnail, which even if I like copy somebody's thumbnail already, but I add my own thing to it, it just like looks more like my style of thumbnails that I would make. So it's like a 50-50 thing. I don't know if you've seen like Mr. Beast podcasts, but like on one of them he said, after you make like 100 videos, they're all gonna be like super bad, but then on like 101 video, we can talk. So same applies to thumbnails. Your thumbnails don't look good until you made like so many of them that you actually become better after you make every single one. Adding something new to every thumbnail you make is gonna make your like, in the long run, it's gonna make your thumbnail so much better. You might like not notice it at first, like, oh, I added some inner glow, oh, I added like outer glow, oh, I added this, I added that. But then when you combine all of those like little things, it's just gonna look like so much better. And copying big creators like sometimes helps to learn, but then after some time, the creativity will come because you know how to do things that you learn from like recreating thumbnails. So you can practice by recreating thumbnails from like big creators, and then the creativity will come. And then also, I don't know if that's like for everybody, but to people who start making thumbnails and they want to sell them, like at the very beginning, don't do it. Get better first and then sell them. Because I've seen too many like small thumbnail makers that just started. They don't make like good thumbnails, and they try to sell them for like $5, $10, $15, which are prices that are like professionals sometimes use. I use. So yeah.
Well, as a thumbnail designer, you kind of have to focus on
Yeah.
how CTR it is. But whenever I do work for myself, just like for fun, which rarely happens, I do really like going in for a more artistic vibe. Just to like, I don't know, pinch my curiosity,
Yeah.
challenge myself a bit.
It's kind of sad how thumbnails do kind of limit. They don't really reward your artistic creativity as much as some things do.
Yeah, I mean, to some extent they do, but a really bad design thumbnail could go really good. But I do
Yeah.
feel like really good thumbnails also get rewarded.
Yeah, they tend to do better, which helps.
Yeah.
Fifth question. Where do you get your inspiration for thumbnails from?
Probably YouTube. Just like search up the title, see if anyone's done anything similar, and see how I could replicate that, but add my own twist into it as well.
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the best ways, because with thumbnails, it helps if viewers can, if they're already familiar with the idea that's being presented in the thumbnail, then that will help them understand it even more.
Mm.
So for me, I usually get inspired by looking at the portfolios of other designers, right? I have a lot of designers that I really look up to, some good friends of mine, and I really just enjoy looking at their their process and their final thumbnails and taking inspiration from that. I think the one thing to you should keep in mind is that you don't want to copy anyone.
Yeah.
Right? I think you should always, like, if you find a concept that you like, you should like take it and you should develop it into your own. It's like sometimes when I'm bored, I don't do creative work as much, but when I used to do like a lot of creative work that wasn't for any clients, I would usually take like a very generic concept, and I would develop it in my style with my own like personal touch. And other times I would find pieces of media from other things like movies and TV shows that I really like, and I would usually make those into finished thumbnails, which I thought was really cool, and those were some of my favorite designs to make.
I think those techniques are really good. Kind of taking your own spin on ideas and taking inspiration outside of like just Minecraft, but movies and things can be a great place to get ideas from.
Yeah.
It's great.
I actually like IRL thumbnails so much more than like Minecrafty ones, because you have more. You can do like more creative stuff with it. So if they like a lot of times they send me Mr. Beast thumbnails, and then I remake them in Minecraft, and it actually looks so much better because nobody does Mr. Beast thumbnails in Minecraft because it's harder. Like it's easier to remake a thumbnail that is already Minecrafty in Minecraft than remake an IRL thumbnail in Minecraft. So yeah, that's cool when you know how to like remake something.
So the main people I actually follow are Besht, Milo, and Maxet.
Okay.
All of them are really, really talented artists. And the main thing that they're good at is just consistency. And I really, really try to follow up with that and try to be as consistent as possible. Because that's, I think, the only way to actually get better and consistently have good results.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that can produce one good one-off result, but if they can't reproduce it, then it doesn't do much.
Yeah. It's really easy to make one good thing and then fall off.
Yeah.
It's really hard to make good thing and then continue pulling off good things over and over and over again.
And now the last question. If you had to give one tip to new artists, what would it be?
I'd say the most important thing for newer artists to focus on is nailing down all the basic aspects of designing rather than trying out like different lighting styles that are quite complicated. Like, focus on doing the best, like the basic stuff.
I think that's a really good suggestion. Don't jump to the most advanced techniques, but build up your basic skills first.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I was gonna say the best style is in like the community that I've seen. Don't actually do as many like cool tricks or stuff like that, really advanced techniques. But like the main difference between them and other artists is that they nail down the basics like almost perfectly all the time. And it's like every thumbnail that they do, whether they do something unique like they experiment with it or not, they always have something that looks good because they focus on like the fundamentals.
If I had to give one piece of advice,
Yeah.
it would be like, no matter what software you use, I would say just know your software like really well. I think like you can be really like, as you get more and more experienced, you start to understand what makes a thumbnail good, but I don't think that really offers much value if you don't know how to implement it. You may look at a thumbnail and say, wow, the fog is really nice, I should add that to mine, but then you don't know how to add fog in your own software. So I would say like, ask around, watch as many tutorials as you can. That's what helped me the most. And the truth is you never stop learning. Like as the months go by, I learn more and more about Photoshop, and it makes me better and better at thumbnails. Like one of the main things I use in my color correction now, I didn't know like over 3 weeks ago, and it really helped me. And so yeah, one tip, it would just be learn your software completely inside out.
Yeah, that's a really powerful insight, I think, because a lot of people focus on the end goal they want to get, like what effect they want to create, but they don't take the time just to learn how to use their tools so that then they can create any effect they want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like after a certain point, I think like let's say you go from that point of view where you just want to learn a certain effect, what I find is that you'll be searching every time how to make a new effect, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you learn how to do it, right? Like if I was to say I want to make this random effect, I feel like I would most likely be able to do it just because I know how Photoshop works and how to utilize all the tools,
Yeah, because
so I think, yeah.
With like something I use again and again is like masks, or there's like brushes and blend modes. If you know how to use blend modes and masks and things, there are so many different things you can do with that.
Exactly, rather than like learning how to do something where you use a mask but you don't really know how it works
in one particular
and,
instance. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, that's my tip.
Those are really, really good insights, I think.
Don't add stroke. Stroke looks bad, guys. Don't add it.
Can I have multiple?
Yeah, you can have more than one.
Okay, first tip, watch tutorials and references. Like, just look them up. Stop trying to figure everything out yourself.
Yeah.
That's one thing. Second thing, price yourself accordingly. It's just terrifying to see people charge 10, 15, even $30 for a thumbnail. It's just kind of like you're wasting your time. You'd be better off working minimum wage.
Or charging nothing.
Yeah, just like charge zero at this point. Like, what are you doing?
Wait, so what do you charge for your thumbnails?
Oh, people are gonna get mad.
I haven't checked.
Charge $150.
Like, really?
Yeah. People pay that,
Wow.
People pay that. Yeah.
That's that's interesting.
I'm not even the priciest person I know. Like, I know people who price more.
I guess big, if you're working for really big channels, then they'll have the resources for that.
Yeah. But seriously, don't charge anything below $50 if you respect
50?
your own work.
Yeah, if you're
50, dude. You know how much these channels make, dude?
Yeah.
We make so much money. So much. But yeah, those are my tips.
Those are your two? Okay. Good tips, I think. And that's all the questions. Huge thanks to all the designers that shared their knowledge, and I highly recommend checking all of them out.